Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, fellow patriots, and even non-citizens who listen to this podcast from, around the world. Welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and our website and our text messages and our emails and our donations to other conservative causes are all paid for by the generous donations of the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you are one of those donors, we want to thank you sincerely for your support over the past 15 years. Everything we do, is because you've given us the financial resources to do it. And if you are capable of helping support our fight to protect and defend everyone's individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, just go to wethepeopleconvention.org. Right on the front page, there's a donate button you can click on and give what you can. We'd greatly appreciate it. I want to thank all of you who've been with us from the beginning. There are thousands of you who've been with us for 15 years. We were a lot younger when this all started, that's for sure. And there are many new viewers because of the promotions we're doing on Rumble and YouTube and you, all of you who watch, sharing this podcast. And welcome to all of you who are new to this podcast. Let me just, make it clear. Our goal in our podcast is to look at what has happened in this last week that affects our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Put it in perspective and in context, and then take action to help us, to help move forward, things that advance our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm so excited about the podcast I'm going to share with you today, because you're going to hear things you may have never heard in your life, and you sure as hell haven't heard anywhere else this week, because there's just amazing things happening. And I guess the theme of this podcast, and those of you who've been with us for a long time, we talk about some key things. We talk about truth. We must tell the truth. We can't lie to each other. We can't lie to ourselves. We can't lie to our spouses, to our family, to our coworkers, to the people. We can't lie. You can't build a life on lie. And we talk about perspective, trying to keep things in some sort of perspective so that you don't move too far one way or the other, and you kind of keep headed towards the same goal. And boy, I'm going to talk to you about perspective in this podcast. So, that's going to be an overriding theme. The other thing we talk about is what we're fighting for. We're fighting to restore the balance in our country, the Constitution as it was written, with the primary function being equal justice under the law. That's really the problem. The problem is this two-tier justice system and the fact that, certain people don't follow the law at all. And then those of us who do have the law used against us. We're going to talk about all of that in this week's podcast. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm so honored that you would take your time to listen to the things that I have to say to you. Okay. I take, that's a huge responsibility to me. And it drives me to want to give you everything I've got, the best I can give you. And I'm really proud of what I put together for this show with your help. By the way, lots of this stuff comes to me from you guys who send story ideas and links and videos and all that. Okay? So let's get going. We've got to address, the elephant in the room. The blow up between Donald Trump and Elon Musk was just horrific. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It was horrific to see two people that we know are both patriots who have given billions of their own money for our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Musk put $250 billion into the Trump campaign. His company lost $250 billion with the Democrats torching his dealerships and stuff because he dared to work for Donald Trump and help expose waste, fraud, and abuse. Believe me, you got to honor that, regardless of what you think about Elon Musk. And nobody's given more than Donald Trump. Nobody in the history has given more for our country than Donald Trump. But they're both really strong personalities, and it just, what came out, this fight that came out in social media mostly. So those of you who don't follow X probably missed a lot of it, but you picked up on whatever news you watch because everyone was talking about it. But Elon Musk went crazy. Well, first Trump got upset because he was criticizing the big beautiful bill, and said some things about Musk when he was with the German chancellor in a press conference. And then Musk went off and said that Trump was on the Epstein flight list. Trump should be impeached. Trump said that we should cut all the money that SpaceX and Musk gets from us, and that Elon, was wearing thin, and it just went from there to insanity. Okay, well, what do we got to make of this? Well, first of all, I'm not going to take sides, and you shouldn't either. Both of those people are important to our nation. I know many of you and followed my lead when the left was trashing Tesla stations and their stock was down. We bought their stock. You and I, conservatives, helped keep him going. And, he kind of forgot that, right? And, we have put skin in the game. And we should continue to do so because Elon Musk is a treasure. He is a treasure. And obviously Donald Trump, man, he's got the hardest job in history. The world he's been handed is a disaster. Our government is a disaster. Our economy was a disaster, but he's fixing it and he's doing the best he can. And Trump is Trump. You punch him, he punch you back twice as hard. A lot of us don't like that characteristic of Donald Trump, but we can't forgive that, okay? I don't think the president of the United States should act the way that he acted. But we got to understand, he's got to find a way to get through this mentally, emotionally. And it's crazy. And he's dealing with the strongest personalities in the world, not just Elon Musk, but Xi from China and Putin from Russia, the Ayatollah from Iran. It's a tough job. So that's why we talk all the time that we trust in God, not men. We trust in God. I believe that Donald Trump's life was saved by God for a reason. Now, you see what happened this week, and you're kind of going, wow, is that what God intended? I said to someone, God sure has a sense of humor, okay? But we can't, men and women are fallible, right? And so even the greatest, even the brightest can stumble. We're not going to take sides. We're going to love them both. And boy, I'm asking you, pray for them, okay? Pray for them. Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And I'm going to talk to you why you got to pray, particularly for Elon Musk, because I think there's some pretty serious things going on. I thought that Newt Gingrich had the most intelligent take on this blow up. And so I'm going to play that for you now because he's been around a long time. He's a pretty level-headed guy. So listen to what he said to Jesse Waters.
What happened today?
Well, I'm beginning to think that they are mad at each other. I mean, I don't want to go much. Look, this is the soap opera phase of American politics. Everybody can understand it. Everybody can pay attention to it. But in the long run, what's happening with China, what's happening with Russia, what's happening with the big, beautiful bill, those are vastly more important than whether or not Elon Musk is having a temper tantrum. And remember, Musk is the wealthiest guy in the world. But Donald Trump is the most powerful person in the world. And I think probably that Musk kind of forgot that. Musk money comes from having met consumers, having been brilliant. Trump has the vote of 77 million Americans to say he ought to be the commander-in-chief. And in that kind of a contest, there's no question in my mind that 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now, Donald Trump will still be president, and Musk may or may not be relevant. And that partly depends on whether Musk decides to grow up and find a better way of doing this.
Does this kerfuffle affect the China situation? Does it affect the big, beautiful bill? Does it affect Ukraine and space? So what kind of impact will it have?
I think it depends on whether this is a temporary, very intense exchange or becomes kind of a long, permanent struggle. For example, the United States needs SpaceX. SpaceX this year will launch 97% of the satellites worldwide. It's an extraordinary asset for us. To have the President of the United States end up in a power struggle, which is not really much, it's a public relations struggle. There's no power struggle here. One of them is president, the other one isn't president. And I think that's part of what the media doesn't quite get. And I think it's part of what frustrates Elon Musk, is that, he has a fairly high sense of himself, and should. I mean, I think he's a brilliant guy. I think the things he's done are remarkable, but they're remarkable as an entrepreneur. Henry Ford didn't end up running the country. Thomas Edison didn't end up running the country. And in fact, in the end, Elon Musk is not going to end up running the country. So I think probably things will calm down over the next 2 or 3 days. Trump has a lot of really serious things to do, and placating Musk is probably down around number 27 on the list.
So Musk says it's all about debt, and this big, beautiful bill doesn't cut it. Does he have any point there?
That's just, no, this baloney. This bill does more to turn the curve on spending. Look, as you know, I am the only speaker to have helped balance the budget for 4 years in the last century. So I have some notion of how you do this. This is the first step. It's not the last step. It's an important first step. It creates economic growth, which if the Congressional Budget Office wasn't a bastion of idiotic left-wing thinking, by itself, the economic growth would virtually pay for the bill. It has a substantial cut in domestic spending in a very large way. It reforms Medicaid in a very positive way. And I think, Musk probably ought to get a briefing on the real bill rather than his personality feelings.
All right. The only speaker to balance the budget 4 years straight.
How'd you like that? I thought that was pretty good. And you'll find that video linked in our podcast page. And if you follow us on X, which you should, because so much news is breaking so fast, I'm communicating with you on X like multiple times a day, okay, with important things. I try to be judicious, but that video's on our X account. So Tom Z WTPC, TOMZ WTPC on X. You can get that video and share it. You can get it from our podcast, but do share it, because I do think that was the right perspective. Okay, what's important? China, Russia, the economy. The big, beautiful bill is being completely lied about, and we're going to back Speaker Gingrich up with that, with evidence here in the next few seconds. Okay, but I now need to talk to you a little bit about Elon Musk and why I think he needs your prayers. Okay, because we are not sycophants. All right, the people in the Tea Party movement, traditional conservative Americans, we always ask questions. We ask questions of ourselves. I spend every bloody day challenging every thought I have about anything. Okay, you guys challenge me. You write me emails and say, why'd you say this? And what about this? And how about this perspective? Because it's healthy. We do not just say anything Donald Trump does is okay. We can't. That's not good for Donald Trump, and it's not good for us. And so we've pushed back against, that if you've watched this story, we've pushed back against Donald Trump. He can't be right about everything, but that doesn't mean we don't support him and that we don't love him, right? The same is true with Elon Musk. And part of the problem is we're in a culture where, the machine just keeps feeding you, right? The algorithms keep feeding you the same message. And you have to stop yourself and break out of that. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of the show. I've got a real good example of that. And force yourself to ask some other questions. So I'm going to share something with you that I think is really credible and important for you to know about Elon Musk. This is from Alex Berenson. And many of you may know him or remember him because during COVID, Tucker Carlson would have this guy on, and he wasn't a medical guy, but he was a very smart guy just asking questions about COVID. Okay, and he's got a Substack thing, and I get his emails, and he's always got an intelligent take. So he wrote this, and I want to share this with you. The world's on Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the problem of ketamine. Ketamine. I didn't even know what that was. The world's richest man has picked a fight with the president of the United States for reasons that only he understands, if he does. I like Elon. I want better for him than this. There's been evidence that Elon Musk has a drug problem. His drug use appears increasingly out of control. In January 2024, the Wall Street Journal ran an investigation of his use of cocaine and other illegal drugs. At the time, I criticized that piece for its reliance on unnamed and ill-defined sources. Okay? Again, we're questioning. But since then, the allegations have exploded. Last week, and I mentioned this to you, the New York Times wrote, Mr. Musk's drug consumption went well beyond occasional use. He told people he was taking so much ketamine, a powerful anesthetic, that it was affecting his bladder, a known effect of chronic use. He took ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms, and he traveled with a daily medication box that held about 20 pills, including ones that with markings of a stimulant Adderall, according to a photo of the box, and people have seen it. And to put it politely, Musk doesn't look well. Last week, he showed up at the Oval Office, with a visible black eye he claimed his 5-year-old son gave to him. And here it is. Here's a picture of that. You can see he has a black eye. That's an awful strong 5-year-old. Does Musk use cocaine and LSD? Alex Berenson says, I don't know. But he does regularly use ketamine, a short-acting anesthetic that causes euphoria and disassociation. He acknowledges doing so. The ketamine is plenty dangerous all by itself, as Matthew Perry learned too late. Perry had survived addiction to alcohol and opiates, but ketamine, which he called a giant happy shovel, killed him. I am worried about Elon Musk. He's not acting like the world's richest man or the head of a big public company or the owner of the world's most important platform for journalism or a defense contractor with top security clearances vital to Americans' national security. He is all of those things. Not one, he is all of them, which is why he's the most important private citizen in the world. But he's not acting like it. He's acting like a guy who has fallen prey to heavy drug use and mood swings, instability, irritability, and impulsivity it provokes. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. And if I'm not, I hope Musk takes a break, at a minimum, from the ketamine and everything else. I hope he gets the help he needs to deal with stress and demands that must feel sometimes overwhelming. I hope I'm wrong, but this is how users, addicts, act. I don't think he's wrong. Think about it. Again, we trust in God, not men. What Donald Trump does, we've all talked about, he doesn't sleep. The guy's older than me and he works 18-hour days, unbelievable energy. And that's a genetic thing. And I don't know, who knows? Maybe we're going to find out that when he dies that he has 3 lungs or something. I don't know. But Elon Musk, who could have more pressure? What would it feel like to you where you gave your life? And believe me, his story isn't one of, everything was just, roses and beautiful stuff. He nearly lost his companies multiple times. That nobody could build an electric car company. No one could build an electric car that could rival gasoline engines. He did. No one could land reuse rockets. He did. No one could build a data center with 200,000 machines connected together. He did. He's insanely intelligent, literally insanely intelligent, like Einstein, like Edison. Okay? But can you imagine the stress? Can you imagine you busted your butt to build Tesla and they're burning your company? They're attacking your customers physically? And our country's not coming to your rescue? I mean, Trump tried, but we did arrest some of these lunatics, but not nearly enough. You think he's under stress? Holy goodness. So what happened, I think, is that it just got to him. He was frustrated. He gave everything to Doge, and then Congress wouldn't do anything with it. Okay? And he understands, he's a businessman. He understands debt. And he understands we can't keep spending or we're going to go bankrupt. But he doesn't understand politics. He doesn't understand the political process. And you know what? Donald Trump didn't either in his first term. He does now. He understands how the game's played. And Newt Gingrich said it. Mark that down. Newt Gingrich said to you, this isn't the last step. This is the first step. And it's a good one. Okay? Let's take it from there. All right? I've been telling you about going to whitehouse.gov and news. And if you go there, there's a story that says 50 wins in the one big, beautiful bill. Now, I'm not going to go through all 50 of them, okay? But there, there's the cover of it, and it's just page after page, shows you all of it. You got to go there. I'll link it in the podcast page. But let me just summarize from Stephen Moore, who said hidden gems in the big, beautiful tax bill. Implements work requirements for able-bodied Americans receiving taxpayer-funded benefits. Reverses electric vehicle mandates set by radical climate activists. And people are saying that Musk was mad because they took out the EV mandates. But Thomas Massey posted a video, an article from Forbes in December where Musk said, I don't care about the EV mandates. We shouldn't be subsidizing certain companies over others, but cut the oil and gas subsidies. That's a fair statement. The fight wasn't about EV mandates. Just want to tell you that. Opens federal lands and waters to oil, gas, coal, geothermal, and mineral leasing. Expands tax relief for small businesses by increasing the profits tax deduction to 23%. Renews and expands 100% immediate expensing for equipment and machinery. That was a key thing that Trump did in his first term. If you were a small business person and you had to borrow a bunch of money to build your machinery, okay, to buy a new press or something, new lasers, new equipment, he allowed you to write 100% of that investment off the first year. In the past, you could only write off so much, it would take a decade. Huge incentive for business. Really worked before, will work again. Increase the endowment tax on large universities. They weren't getting taxed at all. Harvard and these guys, they're not universities. They're bond funds. They're investment firms. $52 billion in investment paying no taxes. They're changing that, folks. It's awesome. Cancels Biden illegal unfair student loan bailouts. Requires states to pay a higher match for food stamps and strengthens work requirements. Expands health savings accounts to give Americans greater choice and flexibility in how they spend their money. Incentivize school choice scholarships that empower American families and students to choose the education that best fits their needs. Ends requirements for Venmo, PayPal, and other report transactions over $600 to the IRS. That was a thing that we all hated. Holds universities financially accountable to the government on default federal student loans. What? So you graduate this moron with a degree in women's studies and they're working at Starbucks and they don't pay their loan? They're going to hold the university accountable for the unpaid student loans. Increases timber sales on federal lands. Authorizes the sale of expanded spectrum to strengthen rural broadband and secure America's technical dominance. They've been pledging that forever. They don't want rural areas to have broadband because Biden and Obama and the socialists were trying to herd you into the cities where they can control you. They didn't want you to be able to work out in the country. That's why they keep promising broadband that never happens. It's called Starlink, baby. It's called Starlink. Thank you, Elon Musk. Okay? So there's the first thing. So Elon Musk is calling this bill an abomination. And Newt Gingrich says, no, it's not. There's tons of good stuff in this. All right? And then he mentioned the CBO, which is a totally partisan, Democrat-controlled. Not one person in the Congressional Budget Office has donated to a Republican in like the last 15 years. Not one. But what did they do this week? Oh, what a surprise. Trump's tariffs would cut budget deficit by $2.8 trillion, CBO says. The Congressional Budget Office projects that recent U.S. tariff increases will reduce federal deficits by $2.8 trillion over the next decade, primarily through increased customs revenue and lower interest payments on the federal debt, more than enough to offset the projected costs of President Donald Trump's proposed tax cut bill. In a separate analysis, the CBO recently estimated that extending the 2017 tax cuts as proposed by the president would increase the deficit by roughly $2.4 trillion over the same period. That legislation would reduce federal revenue by $3.67 trillion while cutting spending by $1.25 trillion, resulting in a net increase in the federal deficit. But then they reversed themselves. The CBO estimate against from tariffs strengthens the administration's case that tariffs can pay for tax relief. In fact, the combination of tax relief and tariffs produces a net reduction in deficits, according to CBO. Meaning, all the lies, Elon Musk buying the bullshit, all the lies that, oh, this bill adds to the debt. No, it doesn't. And it sets the stage for how we continue to reduce the debt and the deficit. Okay? And then this comes out. Whoa, they're all talking about, Trump this, Trump that, all the experts, all the people have been living fat and happy for stealing our jobs and sending them to China and all over the world. They're all trying to undermine everything Trump does. And then the Atlanta Fed just gave Trump more good news. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta released new growth domestic product projections Monday, predicting an increase in economic expansion. Because remember, a big part of this budget stuff is that if you raise the GDP, if you bring in more tax dollars by having more successful individuals like you and me and businesses, then the debt goes down. Well, they were projecting growth of like 1.5%. And Trump and Vought and those guys, at Office of Budget and Management are saying, we're going to be at 3% or higher. Well, what's the Federal Reserve just say? The growth rate of real gross domestic product is a key indicator of our economic activity, but the official estimate is released with a delay. Our GDP Now forecast model provides a nowcast of the official estimate prior to its release by estimating GDP growth using a methodology similar to the one used by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. The GDP Now model estimates for real GDP growth seasonally adjusted in the second quarter, the quarter we're in right now in 2025, is 4.6% on June 2nd, up from 3.8% on May 30th. After this morning's release from the U.S. Census Bureau and the Institute of Supply Management, the nowcast of second quarter real personal consumption expenditure growth and real gross private domestic investment growth increased from 3.3% respectively to 4.0%. The news comes just days after the U.S. hit record high oil production numbers and as personal income growth is soaring. Okay? The Trump tariffs, the Trump getting rid of regulations, the Trump investment in your and my productivity, the freeing us up to do what we do, which is try to make our lives better, which does what? The magic of America is that our founders figured out that if you and I can be incentivized to do everything you can to make your life better, you will make everybody else's life better. And that's what we do. That's what we do. That's the invisible hand from Adam Smith, right? Okay, and so we want some more proof of that? Okay, let's get you some more proof of this. We just got, a good jobs report. America is hot. Job growth again beats expectations. Job growth for the month of May again beat expectations as 139,000 jobs were added to the American economy, and the unemployment rate remains steady, according to the latest report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The report released Friday found that the private sector continued to add jobs while government employment declined. All of the job, quote unquote, growth, which we've documented in previous podcasts, were total fictions and lies. The Bureau of Labor Statistics lied to you, and we called them out every month. They did under Biden, but the jobs they created were all government jobs and jobs for illegals. Americans were getting pushed out of the job market. Not anymore, not under Donald Trump. The report released Friday found the private sector continued to add jobs. The unemployment rate did not change from April, remaining at 4.2%. White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt celebrated the news, saying it reflected President Donald Trump's successful economic policies. President Trump's America First economic agenda has created a booming economy. Jobs are up, unemployment is down, wages are increasing, and inflation is dead. And that's just exactly right. 139,000 job growth was more than the 125,000 that was projected by the Dow Jones estimate. Okay? Exceeding expectations. He knows what he's doing, folks. He knows what he's doing. But man, everybody's just trying to trip him up. So then this is really important. This is why the first spending cuts is worth making. Many of you and many of the critics, including Steve Bannon and other people, are just being totally unrealistic. They're saying, well, they put this rescission package up to the House this week. Finally, the first rescission package. And again, a rescission is that the White House can say, these programs are unnecessary. We ask Congress to defund them. And you send it to the House. They only need a majority, which they've got. It goes to the Senate. They only need a majority, which they've got. And this spending is cut from the budget. Real cuts, not fictitious cuts, not reductions in growth. Actually, take the frickin' money away, okay? Well, people are saying it's only $9.5 billion. Musk has identified, $180 billion at least, more than that. What's wrong with these guys? Listen, perspective, okay? The most radical thing Washington can do right now is stop spending. President Trump's proposed $9.4 billion rescission package won't accomplish that on its own, but it at least finally moves us in the right direction. For decades, members of both parties have treated spending growth as a measure of success. Plus, it buys frickin' votes. No one in Congress wants to cut anything. It's the candy tree. Our money goes to everybody because they buy votes. The assumption has been that government must grow and that any program once funded must be permanent. That mindset has left us with a bloated federal bureaucracy that has replaced free market policy and individual freedom with centralized control and pushed the country to nearly $37 trillion in debt. Now listen to this statement. Still, most sitting lawmakers have never voted to cut a single dollar of federal spending in their lives. This package gives them that chance. More than that, it gives them an opening to start restoring the habits of a functioning legislature. Do you see what's going on here? You can't go with the big thing and say, oh, cut all this stuff, because they can't even get their brains around it. And remember, congressmen have very small brains, okay? So you feed them this little thing that's got NPR in it, okay, and all these things they know they hate, and you pass it. And now you've done it. You finally cut something. And then you see, well, what happens to me? What am I considered? Is it okay for me to do this? And then you bring the next thing. Capiche? Understand? Getting the perspective? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It's real simple. We want to cut. This is a cut. Don't bitch because it's not big enough. Say good. That's the first step, not the last step, to quote Speaker Gingrich. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to take you to a whole different place. Because here's the bottom line, folks. We're living in the Matrix. We live in a world of lies. It is damn near impossible for you and I to really understand what the hell is going on 90% of the time, because they're lying to us. They're completely lying to us. And now I'm going to expose for you the biggest lie of all. You know what the biggest lie of all is? Is that we have a $37 trillion debt and that we're going to go bankrupt. Elon Musk was telling you, we're going to go bankrupt. Steve Bannon, we're going to go bankrupt. What's a balance sheet? Those of you who are in business, you know what's a balance sheet. What's on a balance sheet? It's assets and liabilities. $37 trillion is our liability. What are our assets? How come they never talk about that? Our congressman from a long time ago, Jim Renacci, I worked with him. There's actually an Auditor General of the United States. You know that? A real person. That's a real office who looks at all of our assets. And Jim Renacci tried to get the Congress to have the president give a State of the Union address and then have the Auditor General give a State of our Finances address to the nation. They don't ever want him to do that because they don't want you to know the lies. They don't know want you to know what they're covering up. That's a brilliant idea. And we need to do that. You know why? Because we're not broke. We're rich. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene expanding on that topic. I thought that's why I would bring it to you. Listen up.
Doge is great. I think Doge is great. Government efficiency is fantastic. It's exactly what we need, and the American people support it, and it must continue. It doesn't have anything to do with a disagreement on the internet. It has everything to do with the massive $36 trillion in debt. I'll go a step further on that. We can create here in America something called the American Sovereign Wealth Fund. We have over $200 trillion in assets in this country, all kinds of assets. And when you put that on a balance sheet against our debt that's $36 trillion, we could wipe out our debt. Social Security will be solvent. We could end taxes, and the American people could actually get paid because this country is so rich. And so this is something I've talked with the president about. I've reached out to Howard Lutnick about. I've talked to the speaker about, and I'm going to be pushing more and more because I don't think there's any need or reason for any of us to fight. We have to solve this problem, and an American Sovereign Wealth Fund will do it.
What is your reaction?
How do you like that? We have $200 trillion in assets. How are you broke? If you have a $37 million, let's say you have a $37,000 mortgage on your house, and you have $200,000 in assets, you're not broke. You can sell your house, pay it off, and then buy another house, right? We're not broke. They only want you to think we're broke. But remember, Lutnick, go back. I posted the video in our video section at WeThePeopleConvention.org. Look at the Lutnick video where he's talking about all the things that they're going to do for you and me. And he talked about our assets because we have real assets. You want to see them? You want me to prove her? Prove what she said? Look at this. What is that? That's a map. The Federal Public Lands Surface and Subsurface Map. Everything you see there in red is owned by the federal government. Well, who the hell's the federal government? It's you and me. We, the people, own that. But they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to have that. They're borrowing money from frickin' China when we've got assets sitting there doing nothing. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? So let me listen to this. Let me read this. The map illustrates the distribution of federal lands managed by various agencies, including Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, National Park Service, whatever. Key takeaways. Western states such as Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming have high percentage of land owned by the federal government, often exceeding 50%. For instance, Nevada has approximately 85% of its land federally owned. Nevada, okay? Alaska, a significant portion of Alaska's land is federally owned, primarily managed by agencies like the Bureau of Land Management. Okay? How much oil, gas, rare earth minerals do you think are on these lands? How much do you think there is? Why don't we just say we're going to sell whatever? 10% of our land, not to China, not to Russia, not to our enemies, to Americans, to American companies. How come we got a housing shortage, right? How come we don't do what we did in the founding of our country when we did the Western expansion and people got in your covered wagons and went west where they could get 2 acres of land if they would just farm it? Why aren't we using our assets? That's a serious question. We're not broke. We're not close to broke. We're being lied to. We're being mismanaged. And this isn't the only thing we're being lied to and being mismanaged about. Okay? Let me talk to you about, remember I said to you that Donald Trump is literally trying to restore our Constitution, the way our founders set it up. And I gave you a story just like 2 weeks ago. Trump administration violated impound law by freezing electric vehicle mandate. Okay? And I said to you, this was a setup. Because the Trump and his top advisors argue that the decades-old law is unconstitutional. The Government Accounting Office notes the Constitution specifically vests Congress the powers of the purse. And so he is setting up a constitutional challenge at the Supreme Court about impoundment, which has been used forever until Congress decided to handicap the president when Nixon was going down. The Democratic Congress passed this law about impoundment that said, oh, the president can't not spend what we allocate. He must spend every dollar we allocate. And Trump says, bull, that's not what the Constitution says. And he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. Why is that important to you? Why is that important to our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity? I'll tell you why. Because guess what? We just talked about how no one in Congress has ever cut anything because it's a threat to their reelection in their mind. And we say, man up and don't be cowards. Have you seen it happen? Doesn't happen. You know what happens if we get impoundment? Guess who's responsible for the debt then? The president. One man or woman who we get to vote for. What would the world look like if we could say the president can control the spending, Congress allocate it? They can say, it's not my fault, he cut it. That's what they want to say, right? How about if we can say, hey, you came in as president, our debt was 37 trillion. When you left, it was 40 trillion. We're firing you. We're bringing somebody in new. Or how about if it started 37 trillion and it's now 32 trillion and we like what you're doing, keep it up? What would it look like as far as representative government from the standpoint of our tax dollars if the president was responsible for our debt? How about that? You think big things are happening? Oh, baby. This is a total remake. This is a reset of our whole form of government that gets rid of the stupidity and the undermining that centuries of lawyers have done to undermine every part of our process. That's why they won't do regular order. That's the only representation you have when you elect your congressman and senator is when they do the budget, because the power of the purse, right? And they're supposed to meet in their committees, the Energy Committee, the Defense Committee, whatever, and they're supposed to do the budget for each committee because that's where they can vote and make a difference and represent you. But they never do it. They haven't done it in 25 years. You know why? They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to cut anything. They want to give away goodies. So what do you have? It's an omnibus bill. Hey, can't blame me. I'm only one vote. I didn't like these 27 things, but, it's in the bill. What can I tell you? Yeah, you could have said that you were in committee and you killed those 27 things in your committee, but you won't. We're broken. Impoundment is the fix. Taking our assets and paying off our debt would change the freaking world. You want to have the U.S. as the reserve currency for the next 1,000 years? Yeah. Let's start using our assets for the American people as Marjorie Taylor Greene does. So maybe you ought to share that video with your congressman and with your senator. Maybe you ought to write to President Trump and say, we want you to sell our assets to pay our debt and stop borrowing. That's an ask. We'll put that on our podcast page, okay? All right. How's that for a pretty heavy hitting start? All right? Pretty cool. Now you understand why I was excited. So got lots more to do. I mean, again, I just want to make sure I'm giving you the best I can give you. And so this week, we had something terrible happen. And it's amazing to me because I'm doing the podcast and then I'm like, my gosh, last week after the podcast I did last week, we had another shooting, another Palestinian terrorist act burning Jews alive in Boulder, Colorado, and you and I have almost forgotten about it. It's nowhere to be seen. So we're gonna talk about it. Here you go.
I'm able to confirm there are 6 victims, ages 67 to 88. All of them have been transported to local hospitals. This attack happened at a regularly scheduled weekly peaceful event. Witnesses are reporting that the subject used a makeshift flamethrower and threw an incendiary device into the crowd. The suspect was heard to yell, "Free Palestine," during the attack. The subject has been identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, and he's 45 years old. The FBI is processing the crime scene and the subject vehicle and interviewing key witnesses. We're assisting Boulder police in providing technical, analytic, and additional forensic resources. As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism.
It is an act of terrorism. And guess what? Here's the rest of the story. This guy was let in by Biden, overstayed his visa. They did nothing. And oh, by the way, he tried to buy a gun, and our gun laws worked because he wasn't a citizen. He should have not been here. He should have been deported. But he wasn't. Joe Biden did that. The Biden administration did that. And the people in the Biden administration who did that and the NGOs that helped this should be prosecuted. And we're hoping for that down the road. But of course, the left is defending illegals. And so his family is also here illegal. He's got a wife and some kids. And so they arrested them and they're going to deport him. Oh, a judge in Denver, some little peon jerk woke judge in Denver said, oh no, you can't deport them. Yes, we can. You're going to lose that case. But it shows you who the communist left Democrats are for. They're for the people who hate America and hate Israel. The guy threw, and the injured are up to 16. No one died, but he threw chemicals, Molotov cocktails on people and lit them on fire, including a Holocaust survivor in our country. And you got people defending them. No, bring the hammer down. Okay? And so Trump did this. President Trump announced executive order restricting entry of foreign nationals from certain countries. He said, I've had enough. Today, President Trump signed an executive order restricting the entry of foreign nationals from a number of countries identified as national security and public safety risks. The goal is to prevent terrorists and other dangerous individuals from entering the United States and to pressure foreign governments to improve cooperation and information sharing about their citizens who want to come here. What a concept. The Biden commies were flooding us with terrorists. There's tens of thousands of them in our country right now, just like this guy. Okay? Thanks to the betrayal of our laws by the Biden thugs, the commies in the Biden government. The order says there's full suspension of nationals from 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, I don't even know where Eritrea is, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen are now subject to a full suspension of entry, both for immigrants and non-immigrant visas. Partial suspensions for nationals from 7 other countries, including Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela, face a partial suspension affecting specific visa categories and requiring reduced visa validity. Trump said, we don't want them here. We don't want them here. And we don't. What are they doing here? We didn't vet anyone. That in itself is criminal. Okay? Who did that? Yeah, Democrats did that. Who's the Democratic leader of the House right now? It's this moron, this anti-American communist, Hakeem Jeffries.
Every single ICE agent who's engaged in this aggressive overreach and are trying to hide their identities from the American people will be unsuccessful in doing that. This is America. This is not the Soviet Union. We're not behind the Iron Curtain. This is not the 1930s. And every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will of course be identified. That in fact is the law. And we're going to make sure that the American people have the transparency necessary to hold people accountable when they're folks who cross the line here in America. That's what's going to happen.
No, that's not what's going to happen, Hipcream, because you are breaking the law. We're not. Why are the ICE agents wearing masks, folks? Do you know? How about an increase of 413% in violence against ICE agents? How about the left, the people following that clown, the people getting funded by George Soros and their NGOs, the Antifa people? Oh, by the way, Hakeem, did you call for Antifa to be arrested for wearing masks, that they should be identified? Did you call for that, Hakeem? Oh no, you didn't. But you want to dox ICE agents. Because guess what they're doing? The Democratic left has organized their lunatic 1960s pot-smoking, blue-haired idiots to basically take pictures of ICE agents when they're arresting illegal immigrants and doxing them, putting their home addresses online, doxing their children and their wives. How's that? Why? What are they doing wrong? They're taking people who are mostly, at this point, rapists, drug dealers, child traffickers, thefts. People who are breaking, the laws, gang members. They're protecting them who are hurting their constituents in their district. They're fighting to keep you and I and Donald Trump and Tom Homan and Kristi Noem from throwing them out. They're fighting, fist fighting. In LA last night, the mayor of LA called for citizens the communist mayor, the one who burned the people's houses to the ground because there was no water, and while she was overseas virtue signaling. She's a literal communist. She called for people to resist ICE, and a person was killed when they jumped in front of an ICE vehicle that was taking illegals away. They are going to war with us. We have to go to war with Hakeem Jeffries and the rest of them. They need to be arrested. You cannot instigate this kind of violence against the lawful practices of our police and not be held accountable. The mayor of Boston, she needs to be arrested. This thing is out of control because we let them. We let them. Tom Homan says our people are being attacked in New York. They were arresting some kids, some illegals in a courthouse in New York, and a bunch of illegals jumped on the ICE officers. I understand why they're doing that. Throw their ass the hell out of our country. Okay? It's called illegal. Not your opinion. You don't have an opinion, Hakeem. You don't get to decide that our laws don't count. You already did that. And we voted your ass out because you did that. You already betrayed us. No one's buying your crap anymore that these people are here legally or will help us or they're an asset. You were trying to change the demographics of our nation. You were trying to rig our elections just like they're doing in Europe and in every other country that the West is in control. It's a communist plot. We're calling you on it, Hakeem, and we're not going to identify these agents. And we're going to throw you out of this country, all 12 million of you, because we must to save our country. They're for them. Trump is for you, for us, right? Remember the ad about Kamala with the trans? She's for they, them. I'm for us. Yeah, still holds, folks. Disgusting. The head of the Democratic Party in the House to do that. Okay. I'm not gonna get upset. I'm gonna go because there's so much good news. Folks, this is unbelievable. This is one of the greatest things that has happened in 30 years. I mean it. SCOTUS sides with straight woman in bombshell reverse discrimination case. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said on this podcast for years that when Barack Obama became president and he appointed the racist Eric Holder to run the quote unquote Justice Department, and they decided that you can't discriminate against the majority. You can only discriminate against minorities. And so they would not defend the rights of any majority ever, anywhere. And that lie, that legal manipulation has lived rent-free in our country because no Republicans would fight against it, because no one dared to say, that's stupid. You can't discriminate against anybody. That's what equal justice under the law is. The Supreme Court of the United States just voted 9-0 to uphold that. And baby, DEI is DOA, okay? It's dead. On Thursday, the Supreme Court of the United States handed down a decision surrounding a straight woman's reverse discrimination case against her former employer. The High Court ruled unanimously that the plaintiff, Marlene Ames, faced a high hurdle to sue her former employer than if she had been gay. The ruling states that members of a majority group do not need to show background circumstances in addition to normal requirements to prove a claim under the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protects Americans from employment discrimination based on race, religion, sex, national origin. SCOTUS rejected a lower court's ruling that Ames could not sue the Ohio Department of Youth Services because she failed to provide background circumstances showing the department was discriminating against the majority. Ames, who worked at the Youth Services for 20 years, sued because she had been passed over for promotion and demoted in favor of gay colleagues. From the Hill newspaper, the Ohio Department of Youth Services hired Ames in 2004 and a decade later promoted her to become administrator of the Prison Rape Elimination Act. In 2019, she interviewed for another job at the department, was not hired. Her gay supervisor suggested she retire, and days later, Ames was demoted with a significant pay cut. A 25-year-old gay man was then promoted to become the PRE administrator. And months later, the department chose a gay woman for the role of Ames unsuccessfully applied for. The three-judge Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals panel agreed Ames would have prevailed if she were as a gay woman, but they ruled against her since she didn't meet the additional requirement as a party of a minority group. They were basically saying, you can discriminate against the majority. And the Supreme Court said, no. We conclude that Title VII does not impose such a heightened standard on the majority group plaintiffs. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson from the left wrote for the court, and nothing Ohio has said in its brief or oral argument persuades us otherwise. Despite the woke ideology of the radical left, the Supreme Court has ruled discrimination against the majority is unconstitutional. Discrimination is discrimination, plain and simple. You and I have known that our whole lives. The left had bastardized our laws to pretend that wasn't true, and now let the freaking lawsuits begin. Everybody you know who is white, who has been discriminated against in the last 20 years, call your lawyer today. Sue the hell out of them. That's what we fought for. That's what electing Donald Trump was for, to restore equal justice under the law for all. The Supreme Court just ruled 9-0 for that. Do you realize how huge this is? This is massive. And you know what? If that's not enough, let's talk about this one, because I think this is massive. Judicial Watch. Supreme Court will hear Judicial Watch case on election law challenge. What is this about? Well, Judicial Watch announced today that the Supreme Court of the United States has agreed to hear its appeal of the decision of the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Seventh Circuit in a case filed on behalf of Congressman Mike Bost and 2 presidential electors challenging an Illinois law extending Election Day for 14 days beyond the date established by federal law. The lower court had denied that Bost had standing to challenge Illinois' practice of counting ballots received after Election Day. It is an injustice that the courts would deny a federal candidate the ability to challenge an election provision that could lead to illegal votes being cast and counted for 2 weeks after Election Day, said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. The Supreme Court's decision to hear the case is a critical opportunity to uphold federal law, protect voter rights, and ensure election integrity. Illinois' 14-day extension of election law thwarts federal law, violates civil rights of voters, and invites fraud. Federal law defines Election Day as the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even-numbered year. The complaint states, despite Congress's clear statement regarding a single national election day, Illinois has expanded Election Day by extending by 14 days the date for receipt and counting of votes by mail ballots. The Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit recently ruled in another Judicial Watch lawsuit filed on behalf of Libertarian Party of Mississippi that counting ballots received after election is unlawful. Folks, we could have an election day again. Thanks to Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch. Full disclosure, we've supported them. We've used your money to donate to them. Wow. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear this. Wouldn't that be awesome? To end this insanity where they just keep going until they can manufacture enough votes to win? Wow. So, I'm not going to cover all the court stuff that's going on. I mentioned, the deportation of the guy, the Palestinian guy or the Egyptian guy who, tried to burn the Jews to death in Boulder. I talked about the court stop, that, and there's all this other crap going on. But we had 3 big wins just in the last 24 hours. Supreme Court allows Doge access to Social Security records. The Supreme Court handed the Department of Government Efficiency 2 big wins late on June 6th in its effort to reduce the size of federal government. The nation's highest court issued 2 unsigned rulings at the same time. The first order lifts a lower court order preventing Doge staffers from accessing confidential data at the Social Security Administration. The second order formally blocks lower court orders requiring Doge to respond to Freedom of Information requests in a pending lawsuit. And then they ruled that you can ban the Associated Press from the press room because they won't call the Gulf of America, as President Trump has indicated. So don't worry. These cases are going to be addressed. And this week, in the Senate, they held hearings about passing a law saying that that these local federal judges cannot issue nationwide injunctions. We're moving on this, folks. And while they're trying to undermine President Trump, we're fighting the fights. And you got to know that, and you got to be happy about that. Okay? One last thing before we take a break here, because this is a good story on law as well. Many of you have wondered about this for a long time. Trial gets underway in death of teen whose family alleged was killed by hospital COVID protocols. The family of Grace Shara, a 19-year-old with Down syndrome, sued Ascension St. Elizabeth Hospital, alleging the hospital's COVID-19 treatment protocols directly resulted in Grace's death in October of 2021. The lawsuit includes an allegation of medical battery, a standard of intentional harm beyond medical negligence by doctors and other providers. The family of Grace, 19-year-old with Down syndrome, they filed that suit in October of 2021. The jury selection began today in the landmark trial alleging the wrongful death. This is the first jury trial in the U.S. for a death listed as COVID-19 on the death certificate. Grace's family sued Ascension Medical in Wisconsin in April of 2023. This is landmark. I think they're going to win this case. Many of you know, I know personally, people who were murdered by the hospitals because of the protocols that the administrators of the hospitals forced on their doctors in order to get the money from the feds. For the ventilators, for the remdesivir, for the incubators, for all that, okay? They murdered your family members. Many of you I know watching this know that for a fact. They've never been held accountable. This case is going to break it all wide open. And finally, you as a citizen will get to use the law to get some sort of justice for what was done to you and your family over COVID. Wow. How's that for 3 major cases, right? Wow. Share those with everyone. Okay. I've got more to go. It's going to be a long show, but that's okay. I just hope you've really enjoyed it. We're going to take a short break, okay? And then we'll be back with the second half of the podcast. You've been watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and we'll be back after these short messages. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. So if you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. It's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right, and thank you for staying with us. I do want to make some corrections from that video. Number one, we are on X, Twitter, Tom Z, WTPC. If you don't have an X account, just go to x.com, give them an email address, They'll set up your account. Very simple. You search on Tom Z WTPC. You'll find our page. You hit the follow button, okay? And then you can even click this little alarm that'll give you notifications whenever I post something. Some people like that, some don't, because it's kind of annoying, okay? But if you really want to follow things, you do the alarm button. Second of all, we are on Facebook again, and we are on YouTube again. It's We the People Convention on Facebook and We the People Convention on YouTube, okay? And the other thing that's really important, because that was a very full first half of this podcast with some amazing stories. You can go back and look at them. We have a thing called a chapters player on our podcast page, okay, at wethepeopleconvention.org. You click on the button that says go to our podcast page, and then by Sunday, because it takes like 24 hours to build this thing, you have two players. You can watch the whole podcast, and then you have a second player which lists every topic I've talked about, and you can just click on the thing like the SCOTUS ruling 9-0 that you can't discriminate against the majority, like the Tom Fitton story, like the court story about the COVID, your hospitals killing your loved ones. You could just watch that one, but there's a link next to it, and you can click on that link and then send an email or a text or post on social media, just that link. That's how you share this information, which is so important for people that wanted to protect and defend their individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And then on Rumble, where we're at We the People Convention, we have our channel there, and on YouTube, they have all the articles in the story, listed with a time. You just click and go to that one. So you can watch the whole thing or listen to the whole thing, or you can just click on the stories of interest. Many people do it both ways, but the key is to educate people about the big, beautiful bill, about what problems that Elon Musk has and why he needs our prayers. Okay? That's on you. That's what you got to do. Now, I got lots more going, man. I know I'm really pumped up about this podcast. So we're going to get after it because there's just more good news that we've got to share. Okay? This one, murder rates plummet under President Trump. President Trump's law and order agenda is to thank for the murder rate dropping by 20% this year so far. Crime data analyst Jeff Asher reviewed the most homicide-prone cities nationwide and found a more than 20% decrease from just last year. Since President Trump took office, murder rates have plummeted. American families were promised their communities would be safer, and President Trump swiftly delivered by vocally being tough on crime, unequivocally backing law enforcement, and standing firm on violent criminals being held to the fullest extent of the law. As of early May, the murders were down 31.6% in Baltimore, 34.5% in St. Louis, 36.8% in Cleveland, 63% in Denver, which I told you about when they got rid of the Trey gang members that they said weren't there and weren't causing problems. Yeah, murder rates are down 63% in Denver, 30.6% in New Orleans, 6.8% in New York, 23.7% in Chicago. Jeez, those are all blue cities. And President Trump's helping you in your blue city. You should probably be grateful because the Democrats have been protecting the criminals. Not only have they been protecting them, they've been importing criminals to attack you, to destroy your property, to rape your daughters, okay? To assault you. The Democrats imported these people. Donald Trump is deporting his people, and Hakeem Jeffries wants to stop that. Yeah, why do you vote Democrat again? Philadelphia had 88 recorded homicides as of May 22nd. 4 years ago, they had 201. 88 is the lowest year-to-date homicide number that Philadelphia Police Department has listed on its dashboard for the same period. The lowest national murder rate recorded was in 2014. President Trump, promises made, promises kept. Nobody does that. Donald Trump does that. That's why he's Donald Trump. Not because of some phony bullcrap on social media, because he does things. He does things that help you and me and protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. The investigations of the corrupt Biden administration continue. FBI Catholic memo may prove latest example of Biden officials misleading, obstructing Congress. Really? You think that Mayorkas and Wray weren't lying to Congress constantly and they need to be charged? This could be the case that Wray gets charged in. Biden-era officials could face increasing legal pressure over misrepresentations to Congress. Misrepresentations? It's flat out lies about administrative policy and where it overlapped with President Biden's health as a Republican clamor for accountability. The latest internal FBI memos released by Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa, put former Bureau Director Christopher Wray in hot water over his prior testimony to Congress, which Grassley wrote was misleading. Those FBI memos showed the Bureau's targeting of radical traditionalist Catholics was more widespread than former Director Christopher Wray told Congress at the time. In his 2023 testimony, Wray said that the January 23 memo that characterized radical traditional Catholics because they attended Latin Mass as potential violent extremists was a single product by a single field office. He said that. They pushed him on it. He kept saying that. It's not true. However, the production recently turned over to Senator Grassley by the FBI, currently run by Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, shows, which was compiled by the FBI's Richmond field office, was not only widely distributed throughout the Bureau, but was followed by at least 13 additional documents using similar terminology. Additionally, nearly 20 intelligence analysts from 13 different field offices spread across the country assessed the memo and was also disseminated to more than 1,000 individuals in the FBI in February 2023. Grassley said, the FBI under Director Wray obstructed my investigation by not providing these answers for many months. Congress needs to know who participated in this obstruction and why the FBI obstructed an inquiry into a memo it had already repudiated. My investigation also focuses on Director Wray's misleading testimony on the scope of the memo's distribution to other FBI field offices. I've since learned other field officers provided input in the memo's production, and that was not what Christopher Wray said. Arrest him. He lied to Congress intentionally. It's a felony. Put Christopher Wray behind bars and then go get Mayorkas. Okay? They abused their positions in the FBI and the DOJ. All right? So this is what we want from the real FBI, which is what Kash Patel is doing. Kash asked public for tips on doctors performing transmutilation surgeries on kids. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has called for public assistance. Remember, 2 weeks ago and last week, I said to you, we need President Trump to ask you and I to do more. We need to participate in fixing our nation. I gave you last week at the end of the show, ICE.gov, report an illegal, calling for us to give them tips on where you can find these 12 million people in your community. Did you do that? Did you share that link with others? That's a direct ask. ICE.gov. That's all I got to do. Real easy. Now, Kash Patel wants you to tell him who's violating the law that President Trump put in place about transgender stuff. Has called for public assistance in identifying individuals or facilities allegedly conducting surgical procedures on children under the guise of gender-affirming care. In an announcement shared Monday on social media platforms, the agency emphasized its commitment to protecting minors. Help the FBI protect children. As the Attorney General has made clear, we will protect our children and hold accountable those who mutilate them under the guise of gender-affirming care, the FBI post read. Okay? So when your daughter or your son hears at school that some girl is going to have surgery in your community, that's illegal now. You need to tell the FBI. Call the FBI office in your area and just say, I want to report that my understanding is there's a girl going to this facility to have illegal gender-affirming care. Ain't gender-affirming care. It's child mutilation. Okay? Okay? That's the reality. This is another story that you got to know about. New emails show Biden administration covered up the dangers to East Palestine residents. Yeah, you think we didn't know this from the beginning when they kept lying That, oh, it's okay. See that smoke? Doesn't matter. Well, see that oil in the water? No, don't worry about it. It's all safe. It's all safe, don't you know? And Biden wouldn't even go to East Palestine. Remember that? The Biden administration admitted possible cancer-causing toxins were spread in East Palestine, Ohio, following the Norfolk Southern train derailment in 2023. Explosive new emails show, despite the White House insisting residents were safe. The occurrence of a cancer cluster in East Palestine is not zero, FEMA recovery leader James McPherson wrote in a March 29, 2024 email to other public health officials a little more than a year after the crash. As you are all aware, the first 48 hours of the fire created a really toxic plume, he said in a chain of communications that were first reported by News Nation. Just 2 months earlier, President Biden has excoriated multi-million-dollar railroad companies transporting toxic chemicals for the fiasco, but praised his administration's Herculean efforts to resolve the vast majority of East Palestine's problem. The crash spewed harmful chemicals in the air and resulted in 115 gallons worth of carcinogenic vinyl chloride undergoing an open burn, displacing residents and leading to reports of strange illnesses as well as the death of livestock in the weeks following the February 3rd disaster. Michael Reagan, the Environmental Protection Agency administrator, showed up on February 22nd with TV cameras in tow to capture himself drinking water from the local water supply, and months later claimed unequivocally that the people of East Palestine were not in danger, except that they were in danger. And your government, the government, not the one we elected, the one that they stole, was lying to you. But a watchdog group has been investigating the toxic fallout from the train derailment, said the Biden administration approach was flawed from the start, and has now released emails obtained by a Freedom from Information Act request to prove it. They didn't always test for the right chemicals. They didn't test in the right locations. They didn't have the right detection limits. Government Accountability Project investigator Leslie Pace told the Post, saying that the Biden administration wasn't worrying about public health, but about public reassurances. That they delayed testing for dioxin, and then when they did the dioxin testing and also did the testing for people's homes for other chemicals, they used Norfolk Southern's contractors, and these contractors used equipment that wasn't correct. They completely botched the event from the very beginning. Yeah, who did that? We want the people who did that to be held accountable. We, the people, pay tax money for you, the people who work in our government, to protect us, not to protect your reputation or the corrupt Biden administration. If you didn't do that, you violated your duty as a government worker. You should be held accountable. No pension, no retirement. You're done. Okay? This is what we're fighting, folks, and it's horrible and it's ugly. So now let me move to and pivot to foreign affairs because it's really important. You heard at the beginning when Newt Gingrich gave that very coherent analysis of the whole Trump-Musk feud, and he said, "This is nothing. Trump's got bigger problems with China, with Russia, with Iran, with Netanyahu and Israel, the whole 9 yards." Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about this because the world's on fire, and we got serious problems, folks. And President Trump, you just keep praying for him because what we're asking of him is historic. It's unprecedented for one person to have to be able to be so skilled to do what he has to do. And the only way that he can do it is with God's help. God did not save him from being assassinated for nothing, okay? But what he has to do is unbelievable. So let's get into it. This was very disturbing news. I told you last week. South Korea flips left in presidential race. Lee secures victory after conservative opponent concedes. New president proposes pragmatic ties with U.S., China, and North Korea amid concerns over alliance changes. Folks, the communist Chinese rigged the South Korean election. They controlled the whole election infrastructure and process. And our State Department, not under Marco Rubio, I don't think I can blame him, but under the Biden regime, allowed this to happen. Why? Because they were all owned by the Chinese communists. Doubt me? I put a new button on the front page of WeThePeopleConvention.org. You click on it, it says Democrats and Chinese. How the Democrats party is controlled by the Chinese. You click on that link on our front page, it will take you to a list of everybody in the Democrat and Republican Party who is owned by the communist Chinese. Okay? That's why this happened. They allowed communist China to rig the election so that now the president of South Korea and all their legislature are for moving together with North Korea. This is a big loss, folks. This is a big loss. And if you know people in the Philippines, okay, they're telling you they're fearful that China's going to invade them. The people all over the Southeast Asia, Japan, this is China on the move. And we better wake up. And so I was happy to see our defense director, Pete Hegseth, say Chinese invasion of Taiwan is imminent. A Chinese invasion of Taiwan could be imminent, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary, said, as he claimed Beijing was credibly preparing to use a military force to upend the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. The threat China poses is real, and it could be imminent, Mr. Hegseth said at the Shangri-La Dialogue, a security conference attended by defense officials from around the world. Mr. Hegseth warned that Chinese forces were building the capabilities to invade Taiwan and rehearsing for the real deal. They're literally doing maneuvers on how they're going to invade Taiwan. And until Trump came in, we did nothing about it. We did nothing about it. Okay? Beijing has ramped up military pressure on Taiwan and held multiple large-scale exercises around the island, often described as preparations for a blockade or invasion. The U.S. was reorienting toward deterring aggression by Communist China, Hegseth said, calling on U.S. allies and partners in Asia to swiftly upgrade their defenses in the face of mounting threats. Swiftly? Holy cow. Yeah, swiftly. Like it should have been done 3 years ago. We are in so much trouble there. You better pray to God that Donald Trump can keep Xi from pulling the trigger and invading Taiwan, because I don't think we can defend it. I don't think we can win. I think World War III would be unbelievable. Hundreds of millions of people dead, minimum. The world economy destroyed. Okay? And I'm going to have some more comments about that, because I think that's actually the plan. Anyway, so Hegseth is acting. But Charlie Kirk had a guy on, and I haven't been able to find this audio, and I will try to find it and get it on our website. He had a guy on this week who was a younger guy explaining, you don't understand. And Tom Zalestowski's been telling every one of you forever. We had our flag upside down for 4 years because it was a symbol. It was a warning to our fellow citizens that China was at war with us and we were ignoring it. For 4 years, that flag was upside down because they have been at war with us for 30 years. This kid, I call him a kid. I don't know how old he was, but he said he was on with Charlie Kirk for like an hour. He talked about like 70 different things China is doing to destroy America. They are not our friends. They're communists. They're godless communists. They don't care about life. They don't care about liberty. All they care about is controlling you and the world. And they have to destroy us to control the world. And that's why I was so happy last week when Marco Rubio was getting the visas for all the Chinese students who I explained to you, by law in China, must spy on us and our spies. So what came out this week? Oh, nothing much to see. This is a small thing. Chinese couple caught sneaking crop-killing fungus into Michigan lab. What? What is that? 2 Chinese nationals tried smuggling a deadly fungus in the U.S. that can destroy crops and poison food. Prosecutors say Zheng Li flew into Detroit for his girlfriend, Yanquin Jian, who works at the University of Michigan, of course, at a lab not cleared for biohazards. The fungus, Fusarium geranium, devastates wheat, corn, and rice, causing vomiting and liver damage, and is labeled a potential agro-terrorism weapon. Oh, you mean like COVID was a bioweapon? This is a new thing, an terrorism weapon. It triggers billions in crop losses yearly. Officials say Yuan research was funded by China and that she's a Communist Party member, working at the University of Michigan in a lab in the United States. She's funded by the Communist Chinese Party, and the University of Michigan had no problem with that. And the U.S. State Department had no problem with that. And the FBI and DOJ had no problem with that. But they're bringing in a agri-terrorism weapon to poison you. Officials say, Liu was deported. Yuan faces charges of conspiracy, smuggling, visa fraud, and lying to officials. U.S. Attorney Jerome Gordon Jr. called the major national security threat. Oh, you think? You think it might be a major national security threat to have someone introduce a fungus into the American food supply? You know, those Chinese are buying up all that farmland in the U.S.? Yeah, you think that might be a good way to spread that fungus to the areas around them? Oh, well, boy. No, they're our friends. The Chinese, they make cheap products and we can make a lot of money importing them, and you'll pay less at Walmart and Amazon for that t-shirt. Oh, yeah. Folks, they're serious. They're trying to kill you. You and me and our children and all of us. They will not stop. We must defeat the communist Chinese and the communists in the United States like Hakeem Jeffries and OAC, okay? We must defeat the communists globally, the World Economic Forum, all of those guys, the WHO. They want to kill us by the billions and then rule the world. They're sick. We must understand the threat. I hope that makes it clearer to those of you who just weren't getting with the program. That's why you watch this show. So on the good news side, President Trump confirms that he talked to Xi on a phone call this week, and that he's going to visit China and Xi's going to come to the United States. Well, that's all well and good. And I mean, I guess it shows that they have a relationship of some sort, but they're cheating on the tariffs that Trump's trying to put in. Now, I just read before the podcast started today that they're going to meet in London, I guess, to negotiate. There are ongoing negotiations. Let's see. Xi and Trump held their first phone call together since Trump was inaugurated for a second term. During his first term in office, Trump's foreign policy focused intensely on combating China's malignant influence on the world stage, from the debt traps of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative to Chinese espionage, intellectual property theft, and use of slavery to outcompete international manufacturers, the mongers, the group that they enslaved to work for them. Trump revealed details of his conversation with Xi on Thursday morning, describing the conversation as very good, very positive, and almost entirely on trade. He noted that the two did not address critical geopolitical flashpoints, such as the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine and Iran's rogue nuclear weapons. Basically, Trump is trying to they have a deal. Remember, he was going to put these 145% tariffs on China, and then he backed off because they reached a deal. And then he said that, China violated the deal. Wow, what a surprise. We all know that. But then Trump called him out on it and said, no, you're violating our deal. And that's why he called Xi. And he says that they've worked that out. We'll see. Okay? But it's good they're talking, but they're our enemies. They're not our friends. They must be defeated. Just like the Soviet Union, not Russia. There is no Soviet Union. Not Russia, the Soviet Union. We defeated them. We must destroy communism. It is a cancer on the world, just like Islam is a cancer on the world. Both must be defeated for freedom and liberty and prosperity to thrive. Okay? So then this story really upset me. And I put this out on our website, and I texted you and I emailed you. And if you're not getting our texts and emails, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and sign up. I said, who is running U.S. foreign policy, Trump or Lindsey Graham? I was so upset that Lindsey Graham went to Ukraine. Richard Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham went to Ukraine and met with Zelensky, and then within a short period of time, Zelensky attacked with that secret, drone attack of the Russian bombers to what? To derail the peace talks, to stop Trump. And they aren't allowed to do it. It's called a Logan Act violation. Lindsey Graham and Senator Richard Blumenthal, the fake Vietnam War veteran, should have been arrested as soon as they got off the plane by the FBI and the DOJ and charged with a Logan Act violation. And until we do this, we've got a rogue government. And they're doing everything they can to undermine Trump and undermine you and me and our votes. What do we vote for? Get the hell out of Ukraine. What are they doing? Senator Richard Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham have scheduled a delegation of Ukrainian officials to come to the Senate tomorrow, which was, I think it was Wednesday, and help organize the pro-Ukrainian narrative. The pro-Ukrainian narrative, don't you know? They're going to do that. The Senate is debating the anti-Russia sanctions package, and key players are coordinating retention of the Ukraine payment system. Keep on paying our lobbyists, our defense military manufacturers, keep writing checks to Ukraine. Didn't we vote against that? 100 senators are expected, according to Politico, all 100 senators have been invited to the lobbying narrative engineering meeting, and almost all of them are likely to attend. From obvious indications, including Blumenthal and Graham's support of the recent Ukraine attacks against strategic Russian air bases, it would appear the Senate is preparing to dispatch President Trump's efforts to organize a ceasefire. This is treason. The Senate does not conduct foreign policy. They advise. They don't conduct it. I am appalled that they haven't taken action against Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham. Not to mention the fact, I don't know if you picked up on this little tidbit, Lindsey Graham is the chairman of the Defense Committee or whatever. So he authorized for himself $500,000 for the trip. He went to Ukraine for like 4 days. $500,000 of our tax dollars he spent on that. What the hell? The bottom line is Steve Bannon said Graham should be arrested, and that, this is a direct challenge to President Trump. And I agree. President Trump. Now, here's what my problem is, okay? I'm concerned that what's going on here is Lindsey, because remember, the big, beautiful bill, and we've talked about, if the Republicans want to keep their jobs, they have to pass the big, beautiful bill because they're going to lose the 2026 election in a landslide if they don't. But what might be going on here? How about Lindsey Graham saying to President Trump, well, if you want that big, beautiful bill, you got to agree to this Ukraine package. And if you don't, we're not going to do it. Maybe the reason he hasn't arrested Blumenthal and Graham is because we need the votes to pass the big, beautiful bill. Lindsey Graham is a snake. Always has been a snake. Okay? But he's not dumb. He's survived a long time. You folks in South Carolina know what I'm talking about. Okay? He knows how to play the game. And this is a part of a bigger game that we're not understanding. And that's why I tell you, keep perspective. Keep asking questions. Keep searching for the truth. Because what they did was really wrong. Now, again, the other good news is that Russia threatens revenge for Ukraine's audacious airfield drone strike, but Trump did talk to him. Okay? So Trump, he's got Elon Musk calling him names and stuff. He's got all these things going on, courts, interfering, and he's got to be talking to Xi and the Putin on the phone. But he did it. He did it. Russia has vowed that it will respond to Ukraine's container-based drone strike on its grounded strategic bombers, with President Donald Trump stating that he had sought to dissuade the Russian president, to break the cycle of violence. Vladimir Putin's personal spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, said the Russian Federation will respond in such a way and at such a time as our military deems appropriate to what he called a terrorist attack by the Ukraine's intelligence agency. And that's what happened. You saw there was all kinds of video on X about attacks on Kiev. They're destroying, whatever power infrastructure is left in Ukraine, and they responded. President Donald Trump revealed that he had spoken by telephone to Russian President Vladimir Putin this week, and that these audacious Ukrainian strikes and Russia's desire for revenge had been raised in the conversation. In written statement, Trump revealed, "We discussed the attacks on Russian-docked airplanes. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attacks on the airfields." Later adding, for further depth, President Trump said, while in conversation with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in the Oval Office, that Ukraine attacked was pretty harshly. They went deep into Russia, and Putin actually told me, he said, "We have no choice but to attack based on that, and it's probably not going to be pretty." I said, "Don't do it." Trump said to Putin, "Don't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should stop it." But they did it. Okay. And again, we would do it if Mexico attacked airfields in the United States, we would do it. This war is going to keep going because nobody really wants to stop it. And that's President Trump has said that. He said they may have to keep fighting for a while. Okay. So now let me go into some other, foreign news that is important because it's just a global battle, folks. It's a global battle. The people who hate the West have used illegal immigration and the COVID bioweapon to destabilize all Western governments. And we have covered for years what's been going on in like the Netherlands, okay, where the farmers rose up and took over the government because the World Economic Forum people were trying to raise the price of fertilizer where they couldn't even farm. And I talked to you about how the Netherlands is one of the biggest providers of food to the world. And so they elected this guy, his name is Wilders. Dutch government collapses, fresh elections loom. Wilder walks out over stalled asylum and border reform. So what's going on is they rose up and they elected this guy, Geert Wilders. Dutch anti-mass immigration firebrand Geert Wilders is gambling on a snap election to give a fresh mandate to his border control plan as he withdraws his party from the coalition government. Geert Wilder blamed the other parties in the Netherlands' four-way coalition government for refusing to sign off on his asylum and border reform plans and for trying to change the original coalition agreement when he withdrew the votes of his party for Freedom members at Parliament on Tuesday morning. Prime Minister Dick Schoof, a technocrat installed as a leader as the other parties were unwilling to crown Wilders as the kingmaker and Prime Minister himself, will make a statement to the Dutch Parliament on Tuesday. As reported last week, Wilders had been expressing increasing frustration. He claimed that despite being the largest party in government, the migration reform agenda that was elected to be implemented has been stymied. We have not signed for a cabinet where only asylum seekers centers will be added. The PPV has been very reasonable and patient over the past year, but as of today, the gloves are off. Wilders has called for the Dutch border to be shut to new asylum seekers, the chain migration family reunification programs to be suspended, to sound like Donald Trump, and increase in deportations, and that migrants be deprioritized for government funding housing. And if these basic policy points were not met, he would withdraw his party's votes in the parliament and collapse the government, which happened today. And he's trying to get a snap election to see if he can win enough votes to implement the reforms to save the Netherlands from the World Economic Forum, from the illegal invasion of immigrants, okay? Just like what's going on here, going on all over the place. And so I asked you guys on X this week to pray because on Monday, because the Polish election was going on and it wasn't looking good, okay? Matter of fact, the lefty, the big EU lefty, actually claimed he had won, and then when all the votes were counted, he didn't, okay? Jack Poso, who is with the War Room, and Steve Bannon, who's Polish, was over there covering this, and they actually held a CPAC in Poland the week before the election to try to help the Narwicki win. Narwicki has done it. The nationalist and first-time candidate has just been elected president of Poland. Karol, it's Karol, Karol, Narwicki. My Poland is a Poland without illegal migrants. It is a Poland where instead of integration centers, we have deportation centers for those who want to destroy our safety. It's the same fight. It's the same fight all over the globe. That's why we have to lead the way. We have to show. President Trump has to demonstrate that we, the greatest country on the planet, can do this. Reverse the invasion. And that's why the communist left is putting everything they've got into stopping it, because they know if we get this done, you and I reporting illegals, ice.gov, if we get this done, they're done. They need to be done. You and I, let's get her done, right? This was another international news piece. It's about Greenland. Trump shifting Greenland to military command tasked with homeland defense. So what is this about? Trump has said that he thinks Greenland is critical to U.S. defense from China and Russia coming across the Arctic Circle. And the Golden Dome that he's just funding in the big, beautiful bill to put a missile defense up includes Greenland. So the Trump administration is reportedly preparing to reassign Greenland from the U.S. European Command to the U.S. Northern Command, a move seen as emphasizing both its role in homeland defense and President Donald J. Trump's ambitions to acquire it. The U.S. Northern Command oversees defense operations for the continental United States, Alaska, and neighboring nations such as Canada and Mexico. U.S. officials say the change reflects a strategic shift in viewing Greenland as critical to American security. Acquiring Greenland, currently under the Kingdom of Denmark, has been a focal point of the Trump administration. And I had a story last week where the Denmark ambassador or somebody said that we're waiting for America to make a move because we want investment in our mining and stuff. We want to raise the income of the people of Greenland, very small, not like 40,000 people in the whole country, okay, the whole giant piece of land. But Trump just made that strategic move. That tells you how serious he is. That tells you how serious he is, okay? And then, the fight is about individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, right? And what we're finding is that Marco Rubio has dismantled all of these agencies that the Biden and the deep state and Obama were using to spy on Americans and to control our speech and everything. Last week, Rubio said we're blocking visas for all the European bureaucrats who are trying to censor American social media companies like X. He's trying to stop that. Well, Kristi Noem did something that I think is really big that you and I just didn't even know about. Watch this clip.
I'm Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and today I'm announcing that TSA is ending the Quiet Skies program, which involved having a federal agent follow U.S. citizens as they traveled by air. It was created by Obama in 2012 to supposedly track dangerous individuals, but instead it was weaponized against political enemies such as Tulsi Gabbard. And since its existence, it has failed to stop a single terrorist attack, while it costs U.S. taxpayers roughly about $200 million a year. Now, the Department of Homeland Security and TSA have uncovered documents, correspondence, and timelines that highlight the inconsistency of the application of Quiet Skies. And this program, under the guise of national security, has targeted political opponents and benefited political allies of the Biden administration. In addition to conducting our own internal investigation, I'm calling for a full and thorough congressional investigation to uncover further corruption that's in this program. So TSA is going to continue performing important vetting functions to stop security threats and to ensure the safety of the American traveler. The Trump administration will return TSA to its true mission of being laser focused on the safety and the security of traveling public. This includes restoring the integrity, the privacy, and the equal application of the law for all Americans.
Equal application of the law for all Americans. What a concept. I didn't even know about that program. $200 million a year? That's insane. To spy from 9/11 to 2025 on Americans illegally. That's what we've been up against. Okay? So why? Why is that? Well, this next story is concerning. And again, as I said to you, we support President Trump. We support Elon Musk. We support Kristi Noem and Kash Patel. We support our team. But that doesn't mean we don't question. So she's getting rid of this program But this is going on. This comes from our friend at Conservative Treehouse, Sundance, who I've always told you, little different take on the world, has some inside views of the government. And he put this story out, and it's pretty disturbing. The surveillance state is here. Why the New York Times concern about Trump is too little, too late. So let me get into it. The New York Times are not concerned about the building of a surveillance state using cross-reference artificial intelligence systems into various government agencies. No, the New York Times, think DHS embeds, are concerned it is President Trump triggering the building of the process and the parameters therein. So in other words, the problem isn't that they're trying to link all the data in the government using AI to spy on us. The problem, according to the New York Times, is that Donald Trump's in charge. But it'd be okay if they were in charge. Do you understand? So what are they doing? Okay. In March, President Trump signed an executive order calling for the federal government to share data across agencies, raising questions over whether he might compile a master list of personal information on Americans that could give him untold surveillance power. Mr. Trump has not publicly talked about the efforts since, but behind the scenes, officials have quietly put technological building blocks into place to enable his plan. In particular, they have turned to one company, Palantir, Palantir. You should know that name. Write it down. Palantir, Palantir, the data analysis and technology firm that has been a big player in defense for many years now. The Trump administration has expanded Palantir's work across the federal government in recent months. The company has received more than $113 million in federal government spending since Mr. Trump took office, according to public records, including additional funds from existing contracts as well as new contracts with the Department of Homeland Security and the Pentagon. This does not include $795 million contract, with the Defense Department awarded that company last week. Representatives of Palantir are not speaking to at least two other agencies. They are also speaking to the Social Security Administration and the IRS about buying its technology, according to 6 government officials and Palantir employees with knowledge of the discussions. The push has put a key Palantir product called Foundry into at least 4 federal agencies, including DHS, Health and Human Services. Widely adopting Foundry, which organizes and analyzes data, paves the way for Mr. Trump to easily merge information from different agencies, the government officials said. So you see how the New York Times is saying the problem is that they're doing this is that Trump's going to have control of it. If Trump wasn't president, New York Times never writes this story. You understand? Because they're for this. They're for this. Creating detailed portraits of Americans based on government data is not just a pipe dream. The Trump administration has already sought access to hundreds of data points on citizens and others through government databases. Palantir's selection as chief vendor for the project was driven by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, according to the government officials. At least 3 DOJ members formerly worked at Palantir, while 2 others had worked at companies funded by Peter Thiel, an investor and founder of Palantir. Peter Thiel, Thiel. He is the gay tech guy who spoke for Trump at the Republican convention in 2016. He was the only Silicon Valley person to work for Trump to get elected in 2016. He then recruited Musk and Bezos and all of them, the guys from Google, to be with Trump. Peter Thiel is the one that got J.D. Vance elected senator in Ohio by making a donation to Truth Social to get Trump's endorsement of J.D. Vance. Peter Thiel is the one who orchestrated J.D. Vance becoming vice president, because Peter Thiel is setting up the future for big tech to join with the U.S. government to maybe do good, but many of us will argue to do bad. And I'm going to talk about some of that at the end of the podcast. Peter Thiel, Palantir, mark it down. Every element of U.S. surveillance state is contingent upon selling the security message with a comprehensive and interconnected database of identities for all Americans, because it makes illegal alien captures and deportations more effective. It makes eliminating fraud and abuse in the entitlement programs more substantial. It can make voting more secure. It can protect the identity of Americans from theft and exploitation, and on and on and on, right? In other words, they sell you the good stuff. But what's going on is the bad stuff. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, David Sachs, and a host of mutually aligned artificial intelligence builders stand to benefit financially from a technologically efficient surveillance state. Their companies and their AI software products are the targeting tools within the DH surveillance system itself. Do not be misled by their ownership of different companies within this construct. They are all mutually aligned. Factually, they are all friends in the same tech sector. The tools created by Palantir et al. Are multifunctional. They can be used by the Pentagon and the CIA for military application, but they can be used by the DNI, DHS, FBI, and TSA for domestic application. Just as the Patriot Act redefined terror threats as being sweeping 360 degrees, these people are going to do the same thing. This is a concern. This is the future. And by the way, tie this into Marjorie Taylor Greene, who you saw her thing about, we have $200 trillion of assets. Marjorie Taylor Greene got in a bunch of hot water this week because she said she didn't read the big, beautiful bill and didn't know that in the big, beautiful bill, it says that your state and my state cannot pass any law regarding artificial intelligence for 10 years. Thinks that's not a plan that ties into this? Okay? We have to be realistic. So I don't have an action item on this other than share that story, which I will post on our podcast page, and then give me some feedback, because that's pretty scary stuff. Okay? Pretty scary stuff. All right. Gonna take you to the end of the show here with a couple quicker stories. California messed with the bull, ignored Trump's warning on boys competing in girls' sports. Now it gets the horns. California ignored President Trump. The male ran in the state track meets, won all kinds of medals, displaced all these girls. They didn't care. Trump said, not going to stand. We're going to do something about it. And we talked to you about, the new Civil Rights Division is led by Harmeet Dhillon. She sent a letter on Monday to the California schools and its members. And she didn't just say it's a simply worded letter. It's got teeth in it. In it, Dhillon informed the districts that by complying with CIF bylaw 30.d, they're in violation of federal law, and that they have until 5 p.m. on June 9th, that's coming up this week, to certify in writing that that they will not implement that bylaw, or they will face legal liability. Many of these schools maintain that they're complying with Title IX under the Biden administration, but Trump changed the law, and Harmeet Dhillon's saying, you got to follow the law as it is now. They will sue every one of them if they have to. That's what it means when you don't just talk, you take action, right? That's what Trump does. He doesn't just talk. This I loved. You're going to laugh, okay? So put your coffee down so don't spit it out. This is just so beautiful. Trump administration mandates Constitution training for senior bureaucrats in deep state crackdown. New 80-hour OPM course aims to reshape federal leadership in line with founding principles and presidential authority. In its latest effort to remake the federal bureaucracy, the Trump administration is instituting a sweeping ideological and structural overhaul of the senior executive services, beginning with a mandatory 80-hour Constitution course. According to a memo from the Office of Personnel Management, Russ Vought, the new development program will launch in September and require a combination of video-based coursework and 2 days of in-person training in Washington, D.C. The curriculum is rooted in the U.S. Constitution. The stated purpose of the program is to ensure that senior executive service officials uphold the Constitution and the rule of law and effectively serve the American people. You gotta love it. When they were mandatory DEI training and CRT training to implement their Marxist ideology in our federal government, Trump has not only thrown all that out, he's going to make them take a Constitution course and understand that you are here to serve the American people, not your interests and not your ideological interests. Wow. You got to love that. You got to love that. This is another thing that you got to love. Trump could beat the Jetsons with new executive order designed to make flying cars a reality. Flying cars. You're thinking, that's crazy, flying cars. He's not crazy. For the Olympics coming up in 2026 in Los Angeles, there is actually a company that has flying cars, flying taxis, who are repurposing some airports in Los Angeles that are too small for like jets and things to fly people to the Olympics, to the stadiums on these taxis. I'm not kidding you. We've got the technology. So this is cool. President Donald Trump signed a series of new executive orders on Friday, just yesterday, that could make aspects of the Jetsons TV show a reality by paving the way for things like flying cars in the near future. The 3 executive orders secure American airspace in order to prioritize American drone innovation and achieve supersonic air travel, which has been killed off, which never should have been, because there's more advances on how to stop the sonic booms and stuff. White House tech policy advisor Michael Karatis told Fox News the moves are reminiscent of the Jetsons, the 1960s show that set 100 years in the future. For too long, red tape has hindered homegrown drone innovation, restricting commercial drone use and burdening their development, he had. The advisor also predicted that advances in supersonic aviation could make it possible for Americans to fly from New York to California in less than 4 hours. The orders also look to secure American airspace sovereignty by boosting responses to potential criminal or terror-related threats and increasing penalties for drone misuse in the United States. He's talking to Xi, he's talking, he's fighting Elon Musk, and then he signs this executive order that is just cool as hell. Like, you just got to love it. Just got to love it. I don't love this, but you and I know this is very close to my heart, and it's a fight that's been ongoing. Federal judge halts Florida social media ban for kids. And a federal judge has granted a preliminary injunction against Florida's HB3, a law regarding youth and social media accounts. Chief U.S. District Judge Mark Walker in Tallahassee said in court documents obtained by Fox Business that the law is in violation of the First Amendment's protection of free speech. Today's ruling is yet another affirmation that the government cannot control or censor online speech, said the industry's lobbyists. Like all Americans, Floridians have the right to access lawful speech without the government controlling what they say, share, or see online, Chris Marchese, NetChoice Director of Litigation, said in a statement. What does that have to do with keeping children from being destroyed by social media? Right? He says Floridians have a right, to access lawful free speech, but children have a right to be protected against what is documented scientifically as being destroyed by social media. Lawmakers should focus on real constitutional alternatives that respect both family autonomy and free speech, he continued. Jeremy Redfern, a spokesman for the Republican Florida Attorney General James Utmeyer, whose office is defending the law, said in a statement obtained by Reuters that platforms do not have a constitutional right to addict kids to their products. Utmeyer's office plans to appeal it to the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. HB3 requires social media platforms to bar users under the age of 14 and requires users under the age of 16 to get parental consent before opening a social media account. It was supposed to go in effect on January 1st, but has been put on hold because of litigation. We have to win this fight. And I know there are some of you, including one really nasty, obnoxious person who watches this podcast, who wrote to me and just started up by insulting me instead of arguing his point about why he doesn't think you should have to prove that you're over 16 to access pornography or TikTok or Facebook or anything like that. Some of you believe that. You're wrong. And again, I don't normally say you're just flat out wrong. I'm just telling you, you kids can't buy guns, they can't buy drugs, they can't buy cigarettes. They shouldn't be subject to what social media is intentionally doing that is destroying. Something like one girl dies, commits suicide every day because of social media bullying. And we're not going to do anything about it because you don't want to give your age when you sign up, when you got to give your age for all kinds of things. Not buying it. Not buying it. So I'm glad they're going to appeal it. We're going to follow that in the courts. We're going to hope for a good outcome. This was a good outcome. CITIBANK ends political debanking policy, rescinds requirements for clients to restrict gun sales. This is another big win. Financial services company CITIBANK is walking back its political debanking policy and its requirements for retail clients to restrict gun sales, making it the latest large corporations to distance themselves from progressive corporate governance. It wasn't progressive corporate governance. It was the illegal use of our laws to deny us the right to speak freely. You would get debanked. Trump's family got debanked because they were Trumps. And now we're supposed to give them a prize because they're going to stop doing that and they're going to start treating people equally? Citi announced that changes Tuesday after examining its corporate policies in the light of shifts in the regulatory climate and President Trump's executive orders. We will update our employee code of conduct and our customer-facing global finance access policy to clearly state that we do not discriminate on the basis of political affiliation or because of you have guns. They should all be sued. They should all be in prison. What the heck are you talking about? You took away someone's bank account because they supported Donald Trump? You didn't agree with their politics? And that's supposed to be okay? I'm glad they're doing it, but you shouldn't forgive them. You should pull your money from CITIBANK. Screw them. This is really good news. This is karma, baby. This is good news. Just in, Ron Rowe out as Secret Service after female agents get into fist fight outside Obama's D.C. residence. Former acting U.S. Secret Service Director Ron Rowe has finally resigned from the agency. Earlier this year, President Trump announced Sean Curran, one of the agents who surrounded him following the Butler assassination attempt, as a new Secret Service Director. Ron Rowe, who served as the acting Secret Service Director after Kim Chettle resigned last summer, remained on the payroll as a senior advisor for several months. Rowe is a typical Washington bureaucrat who led the bureau before the second assassination attempt on Trump's life during the 2024 campaign. Director Rowe also was caught in a blatant lie after President Trump was shot in the ear in Butler. Rowe said at the time that all assets were approved for the Trump-Butler rally. Later, a whistleblower stepped forward and revealed that Rowe was personally responsible for cutting assets from Trump's Secret Service detail before the first assassination attempt. He's finally out. He may be out of his job. I want him in prison. He tried to facilitate the assassination of the leading candidate for president of the United States. He's out. I want him in. I want charges pressed on that guy. This is a really good story. Really good story. And I urge every one of you, go to wethepeopleconvention.org and look at this story. Mississippi proves that the U.S. can return to educational excellence if we just return to the basics. There's a nice 20-minute video of the governor explaining what they did. And then the question you got to ask yourself is, why aren't we doing it in my state? Why aren't we doing it in my state? Okay? So listen what it says. For decades, Mississippi ranked as one of the lowest states in overall quality of life. That included education until recent reforms led to gains in literacy rates, taking the state from 49th ranking in 2013 to 21st in 2022. And it even gets better than that. The dramatic improvement in student literacy rates in the state of Mississippi has been dubbed the Mississippi Miracle. Many say the education win should be highlighted and shared with other states as models they can follow. You should do this. Is a direct ask. Watch this video, read the story, use the share links on our page, and share this with your state legislators and your governor and say, why aren't we doing this? It is a direct result of passing conservative reforms in our legislature in 2012 and 2013, said the governor, followed up by a very strong implementation by our Department of Education and a lot of hard work by teachers and students and parents all over the state, explained Governor Reeves. And what you're seeing now is just the fruits of that labor. What did they do? What did they do? And I have a little thing on here, badges. We don't need badges. I said, phonics. We don't need no phonics. Oh, yes, we do. Reeves specifically pointed to getting back to basics. We went back to teaching reading utilizing phonics, which you and I grew up on, which they don't teach now. And that's why they got kids graduating from high school who can't read because they didn't do phonics. He said it was the right thing to do for our kids. In 2013, Mississippi lawmakers implemented the Literacy-Based Promotions Act, which focused on early literacy and teacher development. We invested in our teachers, said Reeves. We invested in hiring reading coaches. $15 million a year we spent on reading coaches at the state level. State employees that went into schools and school districts helping kids that were struggling to read. The state also mandated holding back students who were not meeting certain reading standards by third grade, an unpopular move at the time. But many folks said, look, you can't do that. If you do that, 50% of our kids are going to be held back, or 60% of our kids are going to be held back. But we had the exact opposite experience. What actually happened is we raised the level of expectations, and Mississippians did what Mississippians do. They rose up and they met those increased expectations in spades. The state surpassed those expectations with the 2024 National Assessment of Educational Projects report card showing Mississippi fourth graders moving into the top in reading and math gains over the last 12 years. The report showed that Mississippi scored number 1 in the country for achieving the highest score increases in fourth grade reading and math. It scored number 9 overall in fourth grade reading and 16th in math scores. African Americans fourth graders in the state ranked number 3 among their peers nationally, while Hispanic fourth graders ranked number 1 in reading and number 2 in math because they taught phonics. At the time when 1 in 5 Americans is struggling with reading, according to Policy Circle, other states are starting to take notice. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org. Use the share links, send this story, the link to this story, and that video is great. Okay, and it's by the Christian Broadcast Network, by the way. This story is from the Christian Broadcast Network. And share that with your state legislature and your governors with one statement. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing this? That's a direct ask. Okay? Awesome. Awesome. What a story. I said last week, America is coming back. We're on the right path. I hope you saw that in this whole podcast, right? Because we are on the right path in a way you haven't seen in 100 years. Okay? I have one last story. I posted this story, this video on our website, AI Snake Oil. This is based on a book by these two scientists, okay? April 17th, 2025, MIT Shaping the Future Work Initiative and MIT Schwarzman College on Computer welcome Arvind Narayaran, professor of computer science at Princeton University, to discuss his latest book, AI Snake Oil, What Artificial Intelligence Can Do, What It Can't, and How to Tell the Difference, co-authored by Sasha Kapoor. Awesome video. Why? Because I said to a friend of mine, that perspective. We talked at the beginning, it's about perspective and about the truth, right? We know that the social media algorithms control you. They watch everything you do. What story on X do you pause on? What do you repost? What do you post? What do you click? And they profile you, and then it starts feeding you more of the same. The problem with being fed more of the same is you don't have any objectivity. You're not hearing the other side. And so you watch this show. You try to find other sources where they will tell you the other side. Okay? And God willing, the truth, like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson and all this. And they all have their flaws. I have my flaws. But the hard part is, how do you just fight through the algorithms and challenge them? So I said, I think the algorithms are just feeding me every story about AI is going to steal your jobs. AI is going to kill every human. The singularity is coming. Humans can't survive. It's all doom and gloom. I said, there's got to be another side of the story. And so I started looking, and I came across this guy, and I just ordered his book, and the link to order his book is on this. But if you watch the podcast, the video, you're not going to have to do it. This guy makes it really clear that this isn't what they're telling you. This stuff isn't thinking. This stuff isn't even right. He talks all about, what's it say on here? It says, this title says, what artificial intelligence can do, what it can't, and how to tell the difference. You and I need to know how to tell the difference, because the threat isn't what you think. Okay? And it's not as bad as they're making it out to be. But there's a lot of hype because why? There's trillions of dollars at stake. They're raising money. They're getting data centers and stuff. They're asking the government to give them money, you and I, right? So what do? They use fear. I did the Palantir story. What do? We got to link all our databases together in the government so we can better protect your safety and stuff. Is that really true? This video helps you realize that it's really not true. He gives you direct examples where they're just wrong, where they can't do what they say they can do. And then I have an article from the guy, from the head of NVIDIA, which makes the computer chips that all this AI processing is being done on. And they're just booming. They're like the hottest stock out. Matter of fact, they just became the most wealthy country on the globe. They're bigger than Google, NVIDIA, okay? And their CEO said, you're not going to lose your job to AI. If you lose your job, you're going to lose your job to a human who knows how to use AI. Very interesting article. Very different perspective. Remember I started this podcast with the word perspective? Have we been talking about perspective? Have you been getting some perspective? I think so. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you will share it because that's the key. Tell people about this podcast and tell me what you think. Send your comments to info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. But tell people about this because why? I had multiple asks in here, right? About turning in illegal immigrants, reporting the people who are doing child mutilation. I talked about, sharing the Mississippi miracle story, right? The more people who watch the podcast, the more people who do that, the better off we're going to be. The more we're going to protect our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. That's why you got to help grow the podcast because it's a force multiplier. It doesn't cost any more to do this podcast if we have 30,000 viewers or 300,000 or 3 million. I'd like to get to 3 million. We ain't anywhere close. We'll see what God's plans are. I trust in God, not men. You should do the same. Pray for Elon Musk. Pray for Donald Trump. Pray for America. God willing, we'll both be back next week, right? I hope so. I hope you'll be in good health. I hope you have a good week. I hope you'll be a happy warrior. I hope you'll talk about the things we talk about in this podcast and we're achieving and be excited that we are doing huge things, not little things, life-changing things for you and for your children and your grandchildren and for our nation and for the world. That's what we're engaged in. This isn't a selfish act. Protecting and defending our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity isn't just about us, about our individual needs. That's what I said about, defeating the communists globally. We're in this together. We're leading the way. And by taking care of ourselves, we take care of everybody else. If you just act on the asks I ask you to act on, the world becomes a better place for everybody, So I hope you will do that. I guarantee you I will do that. And God willing, we'll be together again next week. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm sure glad you decided to join us this week. May God bless you, and God has already blessed America. See you next week.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight